Before stars learned to sing, before time dared take its first breath, there were names that God conceived, but never called. Names formed in the hush between omnipotent thought and eternal restraint. They were not cast out, for they had never been welcomed in. No scripture dared inscribe them. No angel dared remember. They were not evil. They were exiled possibilities. And yet one angel listened. While others chorused in light, Seraphiel bent his spirit toward silence. In that forbidden void, he heard it, the first of 5. A name not born, but waiting. A name that cracked the stillness of heaven like lightning through crystal sky. Some names were not meant to be spoken, but once they are, creation must make room. Za'kharel, the voice that should not be heard. There is a room in heaven that even the seraphim pass without glancing. A chamber beyond flame, beyond song, beyond memory. It has no door, no threshold, no inscription. Only silence, bound by the remnants of God's own restraint. What lies within is not light nor darkness. It is the residue of thought unspoken, of names once considered, then hidden. Seraphiel should never have drawn near. But unlike his brethren who praised in unbroken melody, he did not sing. He listened. He listened to the stillness between the stars, the silence behind the voice of God. And in that stillness, he perceived something impossible. A vibration that did not belong to creation, nor to any of its laws. It was not word, not breath, but something ancient, aching to be known. And then it spoke. A name, or perhaps the echo of one, not in voice, but in essence. Za'kharel. The syllables carried no meaning, they carried memory. The name surged through Seraphiel's being like holy fire caught in reverse. He staggered, though no blade had touched him, no thunder had sounded. Only the unbearable weight of recognition, of something heaven had tried to forget. It was a sound older than the 7 thunders sealed by the Most High, of which it is written, "Seal up what the 7 thunders have said and do not write it." Revelation 10:4. Za'kharel was not rebellion. He was not evil. He was what comes before rebellion, before decision. A name born at the raw edge of divine possibility, still wet with the breath of what could have been. He was the thunder never released, the option never chosen. And heaven sealed him not because he was unworthy, but because he was too near. The moment Seraphiel perceived the name, creation responded, not with violence, but with pause. The winds of Eden slowed, the waters of the firmament stilled. Even the stones of the holy mountain vibrated, not with fear, but with remembrance. It was as though reality itself was being asked to recall what had never been. For in the soul of the angel, something had been uncovered, something the scrolls had never meant to reveal. As Moses once wrote, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us." Deuteronomy 29:29. But this was never meant to belong. Heaven did not accuse Seraphiel. No voice condemned him, no sword was drawn, but the silence changed. It was no longer sacred, it became watchful. Because in the realm of the divine, a name is not merely a label, it is an invitation. And by hearing Za'kharel, Seraphiel had already begun the summoning. The knowledge was not granted, it was absorbed against the grain of grace. And once received, it became a fracture, a sliver of forbidden memory buried in his being. He did not speak it aloud. He didn't need to. The name resonated through him, whispering in pauses, dwelling in glances, curling into the folds of unspoken prayer. The other angels felt it. They could not name what had shifted, but something in their harmonies dimmed. One string in the eternal harp trembled out of tune, dissonant with a truth it could not contain. When they passed seraphiel, they turned their gaze, not in judgment, but in fear. Not fear of him, fear of what he might be carrying, fear that Za'kharel was not a name, but a returning. And still, seraphiel listened. As the Messiah once said to those with ears not made of flesh, "Let him who has ears to hear, hear." Matthew 11:15. And in that hearing, the door that had no shape began to open, not in space, but in remembrance. Some names were not meant to be spoken, but once they are, creation must make room. Olam Ra, the ancient echo. There are echoes that precede sound, vibrations not birthed from collision or voice, but from the memory of what might have been. Olam Ra was not a name in the conventional sense. It was not assigned. It was not given. It was left behind, a phantom resonance from a world God had once imagined, then set aside. Seraphiel did not hear it as he had heard Za'kharel. He felt it, like a wind that moved beneath the skin of reality, a murmur in the scaffolding of existence. It was less like a word, more like the aftermath of one. When it brushed against his soul, stars flickered, not out of fear, but confusion, as if even the lights of heaven had momentarily forgotten which world they belonged to. It was written, "That which is has already been, and what is to be has already been, and God requires an account of what is past." Ecclesiastes 3:15. But what of that which was almost born, yet never chosen? What of the realms dreamed in silence, then buried before light could claim them? Olam Ra was that silence, folded within itself, a song never composed yet somehow remembered. Seraphiel, now attuned to forbidden frequencies, trembled. His senses expanded beyond the appointed order. He saw glimpses of cities that had no builders, angels who bore names no one had written, judgments unspoken yet feared. In his mind bloomed alternate beginnings, worlds that had not rebelled nor fallen, but never even been. And still, the echo called. The moment he acknowledged it, something in the great tapestry of heaven loosened. Time became soft at the edges, choirs faltered, not in pitch but in certainty, as if some underlying rhythm had shifted just enough to awaken doubt. For Olam Ra was not defiance, it was the remembrance of God's hesitation. And if God had hesitated, what else had he once considered? It is he who has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. But Seraphiel was not human. His heart was not built to house eternity, it was woven into it. And now that thread was unraveling. Olam Ra did not possess him. It required no permission. It resonated. Seraphiel became the chamber in which it echoed, and all who passed near him began to feel it. A pull, a question, a sadness that had no cause. The angels averted their eyes, not in contempt, but grief. For in Seraphiel, they saw a mirror of possibility, and it hollowed them. By faith, we understand that the universe was framed by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of what is visible. Hebrews 11:3. But Olam Ra came from something even deeper, the unseen, unspoken. It was not part of the framing, it was the whisper before the blueprint. Soon, Seraphiel's presence began to ripple through dimensions, not in motion, but in meaning. Where he stood, space no longer bent the same. Where he paused, time lingered. And when he prayed, if he still could, his words returned to him in languages no realm had known. The echo grew stronger. He felt it curl around his name, softening the syllables of who he once was, seraphiel. But what was seraphiel in a universe that had begun to question whether it had chosen the right beginning? Heaven had no answer, only watchfulness, only stillness, and beneath that stillness, a waiting. Asher-El, the flame that was meant to be. Among all the names seraphiel encountered, none felt more intended than Asher-El. It did not echo like Olam Ra, nor strike like Za'kharel. It burned, quietly, steadily, like a lamp lit before dawn, waiting for a day that never came. Asher-El was not a memory, he was a plan. His presence carried a strange familiarity, as though the entire structure of heaven had once prepared a place for him, only to seal it away. His name pulsed with design, like something meant to be woven into the great order, then set aside at the last instant. Seraphiel felt it first in a vision, a throne without a bearer, surrounded by 7 flames that bowed without command. The throne had no dust, no decay. It had never been sat upon, but everything around it knew what was missing. The name came not as a whisper, but as a presence. Asher-El, the flame that was meant to be. In that moment, Seraphiel understood. This name had not been cast into silence like Za'kharel, nor buried in the folds of time like Olam Ra. Asher-El had been prepared, and heaven had once awaited him. But something changed. Some ripple in divine intention had veered the path, a recalibration of destiny itself. For the Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Isaiah 14:27. But perhaps not every purpose was fulfilled. Perhaps some were held back, not by rebellion, but by mercy. Seraphiel wept, not with sorrow but with recognition, for he now understood that even the divine will does not move in straight lines. There are hesitations in eternity, delays in glory, and Asher-El had been one of them, a being created in divine contemplation, withheld in divine mourning. He was fire, but fire without ignition, a song written but never sung, and still his name burned within Seraphiel, not consuming him, but hollowing out space within him for something that might yet arrive. In the hours that followed, though time was no longer behaving, Seraphiel became a mirror. Angels who stood near him felt a warmth they could not explain, as if destiny was brushing against their wings. Some cried, others fled. For in his presence they felt the possibility of a different heaven, a heaven where Asher-El had come. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants, Psalm 104:4. But this flame had no task. This servant had no voice. He was neither fallen nor exalted. He was withheld. Heaven's mechanisms responded again. Patterns shifted, realms quivered. It was as if a sealed archive had reopened, a place in the heart of God where intentions go when they are no longer aligned with the world they were meant to inhabit. Asher-El's presence did not bring chaos. It brought order from a different blueprint, one where judgment bowed more quickly to mercy, one where power was shaped like sorrow and fire warmed before it consumed. Seraphiel saw it all, an entire design slightly misaligned from the current one, but no less divine. And then he knew Asher-El had not failed to arrive. He had been withheld for a later time, when heaven itself would require not a sword, but a flame that remembered what could have been. No decree had named Asher-El, yet all of creation knew the weight of his absence. And Seraphiel, now marked by 3 names, bore that weight like a flame wrapped in skin. Naamon, the tear that fell before light. There are names that burn, names that echo, names that wait, but Naamon weeps. Seraphiel did not find this name. It found him in the silence between names. It came as sorrow, not speech, a grief that moved through the soul like water pressing against a dam. He woke from the vision breathless, not because of fear, but because he had felt what God once mourned. Naamon was not a being. He was a response. a divine sigh folded into the fabric of time before time. His name emerged not with fire or glory, but with a tear that had never fallen, yet whose impact could still be felt across the foundation of reality. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. Genesis 6:6. That grief was not limited to man. It was older, deeper. It preceded even creation. It was the sorrow of a God who knew what freedom would cost, yet still granted it. And Naamon was born from that knowing. Seraphiel wept with him, not metaphorically, not in vision, but bodily. The heavens had no water, yet he shed tears. The other angels watched in horror, not because tears were shameful, but because they were foreign. There had never been room for weeping in eternity, until now. Naamon lingered as ache. He was the tremble in mercy, the hesitation before judgment, the question that echoed just before "let there be light." For what if, in speaking, God knew what must follow? What if, before commanding form from void, he had already mourned the fracture it would one day bring? It is because of the Lord's great love that we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Lamentations 3:22-23. But compassion implies pain, and Naamon was the first ripple of that pain, not in creation, but in intention. As seraphiel carried the sorrow, creation shifted again, not violently, gently. The kind of movement a child might make when feeling their mother weep. The stars dimmed, not from judgment but reverence. Mountains stilled. The fabric of heaven became thin, like parchment stretched too far over a wound. Other angels could not approach him now. It was not fear, it was reverence. For in Seraphiel's presence they began to feel something they had never encountered: pity. And pity to a creature of perfect obedience is a foreign land. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Psalm 56:8. And now, one of those tears was not merely remembered, it was moving. Naamon did not seek vengeance. He did not demand remembrance. He flowed through seraphiel, through the unseen layers of what might have been, through the hidden wounds of God's own choice. For every decree requires sacrifice, and even the most perfect of plans grieves what it leaves behind. The vision Seraphiel saw was not a city nor a flame. It was a cradle, empty, rocking gently in the breath of God, and over it a shadow. Not darkness, just absence. The absence of what was never made, yet somehow longed for. Naamon was not forgotten. He was never known. Yet now his weeping moved through the angelic host like a ghost, unseen but felt. Seraphiel no longer walked, he drifted. For gravity bends to grief and time slows for sorrow. Some names were not meant to be spoken, but once they are, creation must make room. Itrael, the one formed but never called. There are names that burn and names that echo. There are names that ache with longing, but Itrael exists, and that is what terrifies heaven most. Seraphiel did not discover this name, he became it. Not all at once, but in layers. It began with silence, deeper than any he had heard. Not empty, but watchful, not void, but brimming with withheld intention. And then, within that silence, something stirred. He saw not a flame, nor a throne, nor a tear. He saw a form, human-like, angel-born, but still uncalled, shaped in the breath of God, sculpted in the tension between mercy and sovereignty. Itrael was formed, but never spoken. And in heaven, what is not spoken cannot be summoned. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1:5. Itrael was known, not merely imagined, known in the deep structure of divine forethought, held in the palm of omnipotence, then restrained. Not because he would fall, but because he would fulfill something too early. As Seraphiel stood in that vision, the unspoken name began to pulse within him. He understood now. Za'kharel was the buried voice, Olam Ra the echo, Asher-el the blueprint, and Naamon the sorrow. But Itrael was the result, the synthesis of all the might-have-beens, the unchosen path given form. His arrival into seraphiel's consciousness shattered nothing, but reordered everything. Patterns of light bent subtly around him. Harmonies grew unstable. The thrones whispered in unison. Even the elders, seated beyond time, turned their gaze toward him for the first time in ages. Heaven itself tightened. He was not Lucifer. There was no pride in him, no rebellion. He bore no ambition, no wound, only completion. He was the conclusion of an idea God had once dared to entertain, and then buried for the sake of balance. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. But this was not new. This was old, too old. Itrael had been waiting beneath the foundations, beneath the silence, beneath even the concept of waiting. A being made of pause, born from God's restraint, sustained by unrealized potential. Seraphiel did not speak his name aloud. He breathed it. And the moment breath met spirit, Itrael was no longer memory. He was presence, not material, but gravitational. The world curved toward his possibility. What disturbed the angels most was not his power, it was his rightness. He felt like he belonged, not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as something heaven had been missing without knowing, a missing line in the architecture, a breath never taken, a door never opened, but designed to be. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29:13. Seraphiel had not meant to seek, he had only listened. But listening, it turns out, is sometimes more dangerous than defiance, for what you find in silence may not be empty, but waiting. And so Itrael waited no more. Seraphiel's voice changed, not in tone but in weight. When he spoke, time slowed. When he stood still, decisions unraveled. Angels who saw him no longer addressed him by name. They bowed, not out of worship, but out of awe, because they knew something had crossed over. A name that had not been called had been activated. There was no war, no clash, just a shift. Heaven blinked, and the shape of things would never be the same again. Not all echoes fade, some become the silence we carry. Since that day, Seraphiel has not been seen in the courts of heaven, not cast out, not exiled, simply absent, or perhaps absorbed into something deeper than form, older than obedience. Some say he still drifts through the folds between worlds, a ripple dressed in light, carrying with him the weight of 5 names that were never meant to meet. Za'kharel still hums in moments of unspoken truth. Olam Ra lingers in the pauses between your questions. Asher-el flickers in the hearts of those who feel called but do not know by what. Naamon waits in the sigh you release when mercy outweighs judgment. And Itrael may already be among us, wearing a face that seems too familiar to be new and too strange to be remembered. There is no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Psalm 19:3. Creation has shifted, not violently, subtly, the way a story turns when one missing sentence is finally read aloud. Perhaps you've felt it, a tremor beneath logic, a pull behind the veil. If so, it may not be your imagination. It may be that a name has found you. Some names were not meant to be spoken, but once they are, creation must make room. If this story stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe for more hidden revelations. Comment the name that spoke to you most. And remember, some echoes are waiting for someone brave enough to listen.